Hello everyone, hello, it's Ngozi and welcome back to our channel, Ejima. As you can see from the title, today's video is going to be 7 things I learned after moving to Houston, Texas. Alright, basically what I've learned in my little over 1 year being here. So if you're interested in this type of content, you're thinking about moving to Houston, stay tuned, but make sure you like this video first before I get into it. So I've been in Houston for over a year now, and it's definitely been a learning experience. Nowhere is perfect. I do like Houston, but I've learned a lot along the way. This is kind of similar to the video I made last year, like a year ago, what I wish I knew before moving to Houston. It's like our #1 video. People really liked it, a lot of comments. So if you haven't seen this, or after you watch this, watch that so you can really get to know, more. But those are things that I just had learned like within the first few months. So this is like after a year of being here. Kind of like what I wish I knew before moving to Houston, or what I've learned in my first year in Houston. #1, I would say, is check the weather every day. All right, I keep telling people like, oh, Houston, I can never live there. It's so hot. Oh my gosh, I'll die, I'll burn, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yes, we get hot summers, July and August particularly, but Houston is known for very inconsistent weather. Every day is like every day is a new day. Anything is possible. It could be 90 shining today, next day 70 rainy, next day it's sun. Like every day is a different. It's very different. Even within the day, the temperature changes a lot. So every day, check your weather, have your umbrella. I keep mine in my bag. Just, be prepared for whatever the weather may throw at you. It does rain a lot. It's been raining recently, and we have a lot of cold fronts. So basically, like it could be really, really nice weather, 80s, and all of a sudden it's dropping like to the 60s for like a couple of days. So like, it was just so nice for like a week. All of a sudden, I'm feeling cold now. It's like, it's something about the way the cold comes in from the direction, like whatever, and it just changes things up. So like I said, check the weather every day. The weather is very inconsistent. #2, I learned to get used to Amber Alerts. Like when I first moved to Houston, I thought it was something wrong with my phone or something, because it was at a point like every few days I was getting an Amber Alert, and it was really scary at first because it's just like really loud, it goes off, and then you start seeing child, something car, child, you see the ethnicity, height, gender, whatever. And at first I was like, I got so scared because I'm like, I'm not used to always getting these alerts on my phone. And I feel like I was getting it really, really frequently when I first moved. Now it's like a weekly thing, but like that was something that I wasn't, prepared for or used to. So like, I don't know whether it's really the children really getting abducted, or if it's like a miscommunication a lot, or whether it's really a thing here. But like I wasn't getting Amber Alerts like this in New Jersey, so that's something to look out for. #3, I wish I could insert this Instagram video, this Instagram clip by the lady saying why we gotta stay inside. Going out adds up. It's expensive to go out here. All right. I mentioned this in one of my other videos. I think it's a video I mentioned before, the link down below. But when I say it's expensive to go out here, it's because the way it's set up down here. All right. For one, most places, like especially when you're going out, even restaurants, is valet parking. So it's like you have to pay to park, or you're valeting your car. That's a charge, that I'm not used to. Then some places, like yesterday, my friends went out. There was like the party, $20 to get in. Like I know I may sound cheap or certain type of way, but like, especially if it's a place that I'm not really familiar with, I'm not sure I'm gonna like the vibe, I don't pay to enter clubs. Like I'm not doing that where I am in my life. It's not that serious to me. Like I don't do all of that. So like I was like, nah, I'm good. My house was 5 minutes away. I went home to my house and relaxed. I don't pay. But like here was like some places charge covers, and then also when you go to places like clubs, it's section culture is very heavy down here. So it's not like you go somewhere, you'll see a table, you just sit down, buy a couple of drinks, relax. No, like if you really want to sit down and be comfortable, you need a section. So then these sections have their minimums, whether it's 2 bottles, 3 bottles, or they have an actual minimum spend. So going out in Houston, people got money down here, because being outside is expensive here. Even from restaurants, these brunches, all these events, they add their 20 something tip, or they have their minimum spend. Going out can become expensive. That's something to keep in mind. If you want to be outside, you got to have your coins ready. #4, picking back off the whole like going out is expensive. Overall, Houston is not cheap. All right, I feel like, let's say 5 years ago, when you talked about moving to Texas, particularly Houston, it was known because it was affordable, cost of living, no state income taxes, you get a nice big house for a good amount of money. But the housing market, I feel as if it's a little different than a rental market, and I don't live in a house, so I can't really speak to it. But in terms of just like rentals and like the prices I've seen within this year, my apartment hunting video that I put out, that if you haven't watched, I'll link it down below. Houston's not cheap. Like, of course, it's still going to be relatively cheaper than Northeast, yes, but it's not like you're going to come here, I keep saying it, and get a 1 bedroom for $1,000. Like, it's not cheap. I'm talking about proper Houston, especially if you want to be in a nice area somewhere relatively new, somewhere. Like, it's not cheap the way people think, like, oh, your rent must be $1,000. Like, I wish. Like, it's not. So, like, especially with all, like, people moving from Cali and the Northeast and, remote work from home, remote work post the pandemic, and people coming from different places that are more expensive, I won't even lie, it's driving up the cost. And I can only imagine like what natives are going through, or people who are making like regular money, like that are not coming from some expensive city. Like, it's not fair to them because costs are going up overall, and I've seen it in the last year alone. So Houston, of course, like I said, it's still relatively affordable compared to where I was coming from, but it's not cheap. I would not say Houston is cheap. I wouldn't use Houston and cheap in the same sentence. I think that people forget too, is like a lot of people that move to the Houston metro area, maybe that live in a house, they're not in Houston, they're in the suburbs. So that also impacts pricing, supply and demand, space and all that stuff. But Houston still is a city, fourth largest city in America. So like for the most part, when you think of city, you shouldn't be thinking cheap, because cities are they're not known to be cheap. Another thing I noticed is that there's not a lot of like Houstonians. And when I say, of course, I'm in Houston and there's a lot of people who are born and raised in Houston, but like when I meet people, I go out, a lot of my friends I've made, they're not from Houston. Like, I can say I legit have made just like one friend who was like really from Houston. Like, I have friends like from like Boston, Philly, Chicago, South Carolina, like different states. Like, a lot of people have moved here, even if they've been here 8 years or 10 years, they're not from here. You know what I mean? Like, they've came from somewhere else. Like, they refer to us as transplants. I don't know if there's another more appropriate word to use, but like, I know a lot of people in Houston are not from here. Like, they moved from somewhere else. So it's like, sometimes I feel like, oh, I want to get more of like that, like, real Houston vibe, or like the food, or I want to really be like more in touch with like Houston, Texas culture. And I feel like sometimes it's difficult because depending on where you are, who you're around, like, it's like a blend of other cultures sometimes, because there's so many people from different places. So that's something that I noticed. Another thing I found interesting was that you pick your energy provider. All right, coming from up north, you just have it's basically, I believe there's just one major one, PSENG. You don't really have the option to choose who you want, but like in Texas, there's a site, is it the Power to Choose? Like, you pick your energy provider, which I thought was very interesting when I first moved to, like, oh, I get to pick who I want to get electricity from. So like, there's different things you could look for, like if you want someone who uses renewable energy 100% or like 50%. Some plans have different rates based on how much you use, like 500 kilowatts and below, 1,000 and below, or like 2,000 and above. So like, it's really tricky looking at these plans, because if you don't read it correctly, like, you could end up like paying more than you need to. Like, you really got to look at like what they're saying, delivery fees, the kilowatt, whether they go, it's a fixed rate or variable rate. So that was something I had to learn, because up north I wasn't familiar with picking your own energy provider. So I actually had to change from one last year because they were trying to go up too much. And when I moved to my apartment, I started up a different company. So that was something interesting to me. And lastly, I would say, which is like my number 7, is that despite Houston being very diverse, like 25% Black, African American, a lot of Caucasian, but like half that population is like white, Hispanic, that identify as white. There's Asians, everyone, like a very diverse city. I still feel like when I go out, people are still very like segregated. anyone understands what I mean. Like, and I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but I feel as if when we push this diversity, this term, I feel like it's very interesting how we use it, because diversity isn't about just having the numbers, but it's also like how integrated people are. And it could be, and it's not necessarily, like I said, a bad thing. Like, I think it's a beautiful thing how in Houston you can go to a spot and it's like really nice and it's like caters to like black people, all black people. We have a lot of spots like that down here. You know, the crowd sometimes could be a little interesting, but like there's a lot of venues that are like known, like, okay, black people go there and they're nice. And that wasn't something that I was used to coming from up north, coming from New Jersey. So it's not a bad thing at all, but it's just very interesting how, you know, people always use that diverse term. And I've noticed personally, like Houston is, yeah, the people are here, but people really stay to that. You know, they have like the Chinatown. You have like the Southwest, the African part. You have like the uppity part. You have the, like, people are very like in their little boxes, especially when you go out. I feel like I see it. I really notice it. But yeah, those were just 7 things I noticed. 7 things I've learned since living in Houston, Texas. Have you recently moved to Houston? Are you thinking about moving to Houston? Or do you currently live here and you can relate to some of the things I mentioned? Please comment down below and let's finish this conversation in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and also to subscribe to our channel and put on your notification bell so you can get notified whenever we go live or, you know, put up a new video. I'll see you in our next video.